Hello, and thanks for watching another episode of ARFCOM News, your twice-weekly dose of the finest 2A propaganda. Today I want to tell you about a new ad campaign from the International Red Cross aimed at getting FPS players to play video games in compliance with the laws of armed combat.
Dip, potato chip, dip, potato chip.
Rule 1, and this is one that sounds like it's coming from a rage quitter the most, is that you're not supposed to shoot the enemy after they are down.
Hiding in a building just to...
Shut up. They also don't want you to target civilian NPCs in buildings, and they want you to use med kits on everybody. Except some of that isn't actually illegal in the real world either. Of course, I'm not a lawyer because I can handle the truth, but I was trained to continue to engage the enemy until they have surrendered. Now, once the objective is safe, then yes, any surviving enemy need to be cared for. But no, you don't just chuck TQ over the wall for the enemy after you put a bullet in him, and you don't stop shooting him just because he falls down. It's not uncommon for a man to lose consciousness to blood loss, then regain consciousness again when the blood returns to the brain as he goes horizontal. But in a video game, there is no surrender button. If you are still active, you can still cause damage to the enemy and are therefore still a threat. As entertaining as all that is, it has nothing to do with the core gun rights mission of this channel though. So before we can get to the dankest 2A propaganda on the interwebs, I gotta pay some bills. Today's video is sponsored by TNVC.com, your source for the finest artisanal night vision with notes of chicory and leather, patiently brewed by the Amish in the old world style. TNVC.com, night vision devices for people who need gratuitous amounts of seeing in the dark. With all new flavors like sour apple green phosphor, white cherry phosphor, and beer seeing. You'll be good at it. Science, night vision, science, night vision. TNVC night vision is made with real dark matter. You'll be so good at seeing, you'll be able to see through time. By now you folks have probably heard about how the Louisville radio edit behind a loser diary in which he said he did it to get gun control passed. So, what do you call someone who uses violence and terror to promote a political ideology? Here's a hint. The word itself is spicy enough to demonetize this video, and the federal government considers you one if you like us. But now we can officially consider disarmament enthusiasts to be radio edit. They have been advancing an ideology for years which centers around state violence. They wish to be focused on gun owners, so it is no surprise some of these nutters act on those directions. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has now held the ban on Bumpy Bois to be unconstitutional. This creates a three-way court split with two courts ruling against and one court ruling for the government's case on three separate legal concepts. One court was deciding based on the mechanical definition, another court was considering the rule of lenity, and another was considering whether Chevron can apply in cases involving criminal penalties. Does this mean you can run out and just go ahead and get yourself one of those fast pews? Well, unless you lost one earlier and you could just go find it again.
I'm supposed to dig.
No, not really. There are no manufacturers or retailers selling them. And if you live anywhere other than Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, or Texas, the ATF will gladly put you in a cage for having one. But if you do live in any of those states, F-Troop is theoretically not supposed to hassle you about it, but you know, seeing as how this whole thing is about their total disregard for rule of law, I'd advise discretion at the very least. So yeah, depending on who you ask, sure, Bumpy Bois are now legal in these few states, but realistically, this just sets up the conditions we need for a Supreme Court challenge. That is where the AFT is gonna lose really hard.
You lose! Good day, sir!
The feds overplayed their hand, and now the Supreme Court will have to decide not just whether the ATF overstepped its regulatory authority, but may very well rule on whether Congress even had the authority to tax machine guns in the first place. Representative Brian Mast from Florida introduced the Gun Rights and Marijuana, or GRAM, Act last week on 4/20. of course.
If you've chosen the Hi-Point carbine as your go-to tactical rifle, the only 2A cases that you're actually interested in are the ones regarding marijuana users being able to own and purchase guns.
Rather than addressing the federal legality of the devil's lettuce directly, it simply affirms that people who are consuming it legally at the state level are not prohibited possessors regardless of federal law. Like any other simple, obvious legislation without a lot of financial backing, it comes up from year to year, but chances don't look good for it, again. But if you believe your pot-smoking neighbors have just as much right to defend their lives as you do, then call 202-224-3121 and tell your representative to put his or her name on it, because this bill doesn't actually have any sponsors, so I don't know, maybe better luck next year. Gabby Giffords admitted the end game is total confiscation. Control freaks aggressively reject slippery slope arguments precisely because their entire strategy is creeping incrementalism. Slippery slope is a logical fallacy only because one thing does not necessarily follow from another, but it is not a flawed argument in politics because that is the whole point. Each concession, each so-called compromise is a step in one direction with no ground ever given. And no matter how many times the leaders of the civilian disarmament complex claim otherwise, the bottom line is, yeah, they really do want to take all of your guns.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. I could not do that. The votes weren't here.
As for Giffords, she recently flat out told Time magazine her goal is no more guns. Her handler jumped in for damage control, claiming Giffords meant no more gun violence, but Giffords reiterated that no, she really wanted to confiscate all guns. Well, I mean, except for all the guns the government will use to unalive anybody who disagrees with her vision of utopia, of course. See, no one actually can want all guns to go away unless they believe in fairy magic, because they're going to need a whole lot of guns to get rid of the people who have guns. So what people like Giffords really mean is they want a government monopoly on force, and they hope to see waves of violence like this country has never witnessed. No, for real, the level of destruction which would be required to see Giffords' vision through is straight apocalyptic.
All you know how to create is death and destruction.
Mom! We need to be a little more constructive here, okay?
Sorry, it got a little dark there, but honestly, every time these people start prattling on about how they want all the scary guns to go away, I want you to ask them if they think it's worth killing to get their way. Ask them if they really trust police enough to give them a monopoly on violence. And now, for your moment of zen.
Dude. It's a Glock. Yeah, the Glock. It's a Glock that's also a bomb. Get the Glock. Yeah, the Glock. It's my Glock and it's also my bomb.
Hey friend, do you like pews and other pew-related things? Do you want to help us keep delivering you pure, uncut American pew propaganda at the low, low price of free fitting? We literally couldn't pay the bills without our sponsors. So do us a solid and get yourself something nice from them. You deserve it. I love you.